I want to talk to you about Big Bear AI. Coffee in the morning, and we also got some of these things done. You can see this one's done. Someone said, "Well, you're still making progress on the remodel of the apartment behind you." I said, "Yeah, you can't see it, but these cabinets we had to get done, and then these ones got done anyway. We're working on it. It's a progress, and those who are progressing are successful, right? That's what they say." Okay, so as you can see, it is $5.89 high, and I also don't mean that as a way to brag. I mean, if you're progressing, you're here watching right now about how the markets are moving, that puts you in the definition of success in my eyes, which is progress. As you can see, the level at which we mapped out as a previous resistance for a bull trend, actually it reached that this morning. So we were watching it, some market manipulation potentially taking place at market open in a lot of stocks, because what happened? Well, pre-market, we saw it shoot up. It was right up until market open. So we started our live session that we just wrapped up in StockMate at 6:30, and it was peaking out. It had gotten all these institutional buy orders right before the market opened. And then as you can see, institutional selling kicked in, and it's been holding below this EMA. It got rejected here, and got rejected. And now it's starting to continue this level, possibly finding support at this level at 475, which we have mapped out from previous resistance. Here, very strong level at which it could act as a support. So that sell down was expected. In fact, it's quite healthy to see, because it means that we're not just going straight up. We're having more of a slow market cap build. If it breaks this level, there are some resistances around 440 here that we could see it hit, but it also could get back into its trend if it's very conservative in the approach that you're having. You could possibly expect a sell down as low as $4.10. But a lot of times we talk about the market cap build, and that if we're going to see that explosive growth, that this level at 480 could be where it potentially bounces. So got to watch that level here, as that's where it's at right now today. And a 10% sell down, while it looks like just 10%, the reality is that we saw that push up at market open. So after market closed basically yesterday, we still saw Big Bear surge another 13% up to $5.90. And then right after market open, again, it sold down about 19. Is that right? Let's see. About 22% sell down from that peak this morning. So a lot of volatility, a lot of near-term volatility, and I would expect that because of the financials. Really, it's great. We're looking at the company. I just got a gym session in recently. It was last night. When we arrived, this is funny actually. Excuse me. It's like I'm gonna sneeze, but I'm not sneezing, but I feel like I'm gonna sneeze. There's this trick where if you push your tongue to the top of the roof of your mouth, physiologists have found that actually hinders your ability to sneeze, and you don't sneeze. So I use it as someone with seasonal allergies quite often. So anyway, Big Bear AI deploys enhanced passenger processing biometric technology. And this was the news that really sent them up most likely in the last few days. But I was at the gym. I get there pretty late, like I normally do, around 7 to 8 p.m. because it just depends on the day, but usually that's when things wrap up. And I walk into the gym, and Curtis, this gentleman who I've been helping kind of invest for the last few months, just before this surge yesterday on Big Bear, back here, I think it was probably the 23rd or the 20th, he got some call options. And he told me, he said, hey, he came out with a smile out of the steam room. He said, I'm up big on my options. I said, hey, that's excellent, Curtis. Congratulations. And he said, I watched some videos, and what do you think the next target? He said, what about that $7-10 range? I said, I think we're going to see some pullbacks first. The reason being is the financials. He said, but Market Beats just made a big presentation where they said Palantir is overvalued, but take a look at Big Bear. And he's like, so maybe that looks good. And, kind of that just ties back to the fundamentals. And I didn't have a full conversation with him, but if Curtis, you're watching this, this is why. We always go directly to the source. While there's a lot of articles, like if I go search BBAI stock, and I apologize, guys, I don't have the live chat open. I'll have to open it up here so I can see you guys. But let me just see what this looks like. So you got 36 minutes ago. You have all these articles 5 minutes ago, an hour ago. And there's all of these hype articles from these sites that I've never heard of. In Invez, it says it's bullish. Check out this breakout that's coming. If you read that article, you said it's a breakout, I'm buying. It's target $6, I'm there. They buy at the top. We talked about it yesterday. We're like, I urge caution. There's, this is a huge surgence, and we're going to most likely see some corrections. And so one thing to note, there's going to be articles. Sometimes they're valuable, but and there's maybe that market beat article that he was mentioning, where they were considering it an opportunity, comparing it to Palantir. But the reality was these articles, they don't always tell the truth. And that's why I want to go direct to the source. And when we see the source, we know they have these new levels of growth that they're tapping into, especially primarily in the travel and trade with their Veriscan. And we know the real world value there because we get to see it firsthand, but we also know that that's most likely going to see some revenue increases for them in their next quarter. But nevertheless, it still doesn't change the true fact of their current financials. The current financials weren't anything that was massively surprising. While they cut down some of their debt recently in the last quarter, if we go to their balance sheet, and they really dropped their debt down, that was higher than their total liabilities in December, and now their total assets are much greater than that of their liabilities. The reality is still that we haven't seen the net income look really good. The revenue is only up 5% year over year. So while this next quarter, absolutely, it will most likely surprise if you have them, let's say, come in with 50 million in revenue, maybe 100 million, but let's just say they come in with 70 million in revenue, and the net income then maybe gets dropped to just negative 30 million. The financials, while we're starting to see them expand, and a lot of people would say the real play here is all of the data that they're going to have and why that's going to make them a valuable company, especially with the Veriscan. Like, think of all the data that they will obtain by having this software, and all the airports they're expanding into. But nevertheless, there is the financial aspect. And you know how institutions are, they can be very much based on not always what could be, but the true financials to justify the investment. And when we look at some of the holders, which is that is for Rigetti, that is not for Big Bear, although Rigetti's holders are interesting. Big Bear AI has seen increased positions, but there's not any huge amount of positions. Let's see what the biggest holder, they got 63 million shares, or 88 million. You got 8 million shares on BlackRock, and they even sized down their position a bit. But the reality is, yes, the long term looks very promising. I think that $7-10 range absolutely makes sense. Long term targets, I'm there. But in the near term, even before their earnings come out next month, there's still most likely going to be that short-term volatility, or more manipulation, which that's kind of what this was here this morning, that we could see before the intrinsic value starts to really validate. Now, with that being said, RSI, MACD do look very oversold now. We see it holding above the 200-day moving average, which, as you guys know, we use that moving average as a very good indication of resistance or support in bullish momentums. You could see like it acts as a support oftentimes. And so now that we're seeing it sell back down to that 200-day moving average, and it's at this previous resistance, this support, this is what we got to watch. If it can hold this level, excellent. We start to maybe get that trade from here, back up into these levels. And what is that margin for profit? It's, we're looking at another 25% or something to those highs that we just reached. And that's not including if we see true breakout into the $7 range. But again, in the near term, definitely volatile. I would look at a validation of this 475 today and really see if it can hold that level. Otherwise, we do have a next target around 440, 435. But the near term, that's how it looks. Now, it's volatile today. We could see some explosion kick in towards the end of the week. But just remember that the missile strikes hits, the Fed hasn't been the most bullish. We still haven't seen the interest rate cuts that we're anticipating. And on top of that, the market, we didn't trade this morning. I don't know if you guys know. We entered our live session. There was about 50 stockmates tuned in. A lot of people were saying this and that, and we're looking at it. We're saying we're not going to trade today. Look at the market and how it's pushed up with this manipulation, and then we see a lot of stocks have a sell-off to start the day. And I'm like, I think it's going to bleed a little more, especially after seeing rallies for 2 days, despite the growth or despite the negative catalyst of what's going on in Iran. So that's kind of the deal. And let me take a look at the live chat as we take a look here. So I'm gonna open this up. How do I do this? This is a new browser I'm using that, by the way, is making it like super valuable for members, I believe, because one of the things that we do, like for example, if we're doing analysis here on Google, I can win on Google. I could look at this article in very short amount of time, so it allows me to get the AI summaries of articles, and I've been using it quite often. It does help with the analysis, and it's just getting used to it though. So let's pull up. I'm gonna jump into the live session, and I'm going to view the live chat so I could see you guys. Okay. So we got BBAI dip. You got SRM dip. Saul says just went all in on 5,000 shares at $4.83. Hey, by all means, all power to you. If you see the value, I think one of the things we stress, if it does not bounce here, potentially if it sells down more or something like that, the most important thing is differentiate between the short term and the long term. If it's a long term trade, by all means, I guess it matters less on the entry. If it's a short term trade, something like that, having that plan in place for that proper risk management, maybe it's 1 to 2% or 3% stop loss, but you're going for that 20 to 30% swing, great. But personally, I found that really helps out. And that's why we created the trade profit calculator that is able to do that for you. So if you guys ever want to grab that, you get on our email list in the first link below. And I would love to send that to you. So the other comment I see here is from Sam. He says, Black Sky has done good, but I only bought one and it happens every time. So I need 100,000 more. Yeah, Sam, that's funny. That is funny because, Black Sky it's been a good play. And we've seen it really surge up into new levels of some unprecedented heights as of recently. And part of it, I think, is that they have that approach with the AI. And I'd love to jump in more with that. And then you got Tigrity says, just joining. Hopefully this is a new low. A lot of people sold at 580. And then we got another comment there. Do you think all AI stocks move the same way? Yeah, no, not normally. They don't move the same way. There's some that are tightly correlated. Like you could look at semiconductors, for example. A lot of them move, kind of similar. You want to look at the individual markets, but there's not always big correlation between all of the AI stocks, unless they have conflicting or news that is, congruent across the whole market. Then yeah, they're going to move together for sure. When it comes to this move though on Big Bear, the sell down is expected. It is part of the greater trend, and it's actually what we mapped out as a previous resistance yesterday. So this level here, it's a support. It's also the 200-day moving average. And it's really the level at which we look for that bounce. The distribution has kicked in. So kind of very classic market cycle. You got this big accumulation yesterday by institutions. Then pre-market today, we had this manipulation. So you have this big surge. You can kind of check it out on the 1 minute where you just have this buy up until market open. Right at market open, you see the sell orders kick in from institutions, and then we see distribution kick in. That's a true distribution. So it really was a true accumulation, manipulation, distribution now. And again, we're at this support level. The question is the distribution here getting ready to find that it's losing steam, and we start to see some potential accumulation kick back in? There is a strong support at 470, so we have to watch it. But again, it's got this downward momentum. It's possible it continues down into that overall greater trend that we've seen for the last few months. Now, what would I do on a short term? As I mentioned, we weren't trading today because of the bleeding in the market, and I wasn't too fond of some of the manipulation pre-market. It wasn't just over here on BBAI, to be clear, too. I mean, we saw that happen on a lot of stocks this morning, and the swing has been about 25% down on Big Bear after that 35% swing. So it's volatile, it's kicking in, and it's what we would expect on the near term. The next trades, so now that we see this breakout and possible sell down, the next trades for BBAI would come in progressively watching this level here at 470 and looking for some more confirmation on that validation of that previous resistance. If we don't see it, again, it's totally fine, but most likely we see that 440 level, that previous resistance level that will hit, and it's part of this. I would expect a sell down. It's what we talked about yesterday. So it's just part of the game. And also you got Carl in here saying, is AMD overbought? Well, I still got my AMD. It's funny you say that because I was in it this morning. It just our long-term position, so I wasn't trading it, right? But I was looking at it this morning, and we have a position there, AMD, couple positions, 39% there, and then 48% up there. And after we made this trade earlier last week, it was this swing it was a 21% trade, actually, one of our better trades last week on AMD stock, AMDL. We didn't actually touch the long-term positions. I said, this is fine. We've been waiting for this surge. We've been waiting for this move, and the breakout is happening right now. And so I actually held my AMD personally, and the next target is that 26% move up into $170. Now, outside of that, you have a 6% increase of that 26% that has already occurred. So that's the move we're watching with AMD. I think they're bullish. One of the things you got to look at is catalysts. We look at the market. Semiconductors and data centers are the future of AI. So they're in that market. The AI boom is here. They're one of the main companies that stand to benefit. However, when you look at the Starlink partnerships, T-Mobile, for example, I know T-Mobile's good. I know, but I don't believe that this surge they saw was only a result of just their good practices of their cellular connection. I do believe it was that this was right when the Starlink news came out that they were partnered with Starlink, and then very shortly after, what happened? We saw them shoot up to this $276 price point, 143% over that 3-year period. And they even did a Super Bowl ad with Starlink, and then they continued to sell back down, and now they're selling back down to this previous support here, or this rising support, I should say. And AMD, it was back here. They partnered with Starlink as well. So they're in the space tech industry. It just demonstrates that they are a company that big tech companies are seeing their tech as the type of semiconductors that they would be comfortable sending up into space for 20 years, 100 years, or whatever. And so those are the types of quality that we look for. And then, of course, you have the actual financials look really good there as well. Now, the other thing to note with Big Bear, I think that we could see this run continue with Big Bear. It's quite possible we see the run continue. And maybe it's that $7 range somewhere up in here. And when earnings hit, I think what's going to happen is we'll see a temporary sell down, because the earnings, while they're good, they might not come in as favorable as what people expect. That's what I'm kind of anticipating. And so that would, like, it could be, let's say it's 100 million. Their net income maybe starts to turn positive, but does it, put that market cap up into the $2 billion range justification that it would be at during earnings? Probably not. Maybe. And so I think what could happen is they see a sell down after earnings, or they see some rallies continue into earnings, and then we see earnings, they sell down, and then we start to continue. I could be wrong. In fact, the other option could be that they just get back into their trend and we see this conservative approach kick in, where over the next few days, they get back into trend and we see them sell down to that $4 range. It's quite possible. I think it's less likely, and the bullish outlook would be more likely that they do kind of find support here, if not at 470, somewhere around 440, and begin to make that trend continue. I think that would make sense. Even in a market downturn, or let's say correction from greater market movement, they are in an industry where the US government still plans to invest in more AI. They definitely plan to invest more in defense, and they're the company that most likely would be one of the front runners as a top company to put money into, because of the US not taking lightly. They're about to have millions and millions of immigrants come into the US as a result of the World Cup in 2026 happening in North America. So it's a big deal. I don't think that it's going to be taken lightly as far as the documentation and things like that. We've seen some shifts happen. Like, my wife is from Argentina, so I kind of know that whole process of like going through the immigration, sending off the applications, the grueling 26 documents that we had to send in just to get her green card. This process has been dated and it has been difficult in their documentation process. And with Big Bear, they're basically optimizing some of that. And their previous or their CEO now, who recently came into the light in January here, was the commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and he was also the acting secretary of U.S. Department of Homeland Security. So it makes sense that he would be driving some of the growth of the company's contracts, and also continuing to know the rights pathways and kind of gold mines to go for contracts. So that's why I see him as that CEO that could potentially drive some more good contracts and revenue for Big Bear. That's kind of how it looks in the near term. We'll be monitoring it throughout the day. Thanks so much for watching, guys. And again, if you ever want to tune on into our daily live trading, portfolios up 2%, mostly with AMD, but we trade AI stocks, defense, a lot of quantum and space tech stocks, even some robotics and nuclear. And we just reopened the virtual stock trading system too, so that's one to check out. But the Stockmates community, if you ever want targets, we got targets for this week. In fact, after hours, we have Micron reporting earnings, and if you ever want to see pre-market, after hours, when companies that are notable in the tech industry are reporting earnings this week, it's a little sparse, but we released that so you know when they're reporting, as well as the we do that every week with the targets. And on top of that, you can surround yourself with like-minded individuals, get our daily live trading every single morning where we go live, and get access to not just the targets, but there's about 70 plus lessons there. If you ever want to learn technical, fundamental analysis or things like that inside of Stockmate, it's there. And we also have the books. So if you're ever struggling to formulate a plan or just kind of learning the difference, I wrote this book pre-ChatGPT, before it existed. It compares the ordinary versus the profitable. Reward, not having a plan, emotional FOMO or pump and dumps versus having a trading plan, having stocks that meet that criteria, going through the research. And not only that, it also talks about how to learn. People struggle to actually figure out the best ways to learn. Examples of trading plans, everything else, everything that we go through, including the emotional IQ, which is something a lot of investors struggle with. So everything's written there, and also from my own experience. So if you would like to get it and also grab your free t-shirts when you join Stockmates that will send you anywhere in the world, it's the second link in the description down below, and would love to see you there at market open tomorrow morning. Hopefully I earned your thumbs up. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, and I earned it, and do consider subscribing. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.